Pettersson Price for Friday, January 10th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. And forgive us the early start here today, but with the Canucks playing another early start, 4 p.m. for us in Carolina, not to mention 4 p.m. in Toronto tomorrow, we wanted to give the show a little more shelf life, wanted to get it out a little earlier so you had more time in advance of what I think is going to be a big back-to-back here for the Vancouver Canucks, Blake. Not only do they hit the midpoint of the season after tonight's game in Carolina, game 41 on the schedule, but sitting there on the final play, and of course in Toronto tomorrow, sitting there on the final playoff spot in the midst of a 5-game road trip. Do we know for sure Elias Pettersson is coming back tonight? But I mean, it stands to reason that Elias Pettersson, he was cleared to play Wednesday. It'll be so getting healthier, getting your lineup back in order here. We'll discuss over the course of this program. We'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, inspired from our Monday debate. Was it Monday? Patrick joined us Monday this week. Patrick Johnston and Blake Price both tried to tell me that there is a world where you can say the Vancouver Canucks have overachieved this season, given who has been missing from the lineup, given the fact they still are on a playoff spot, and given the fact that other teams that have drama going on have fallen below the playoff bar or weren't able to match last year's success, like the Nashville Predators. So what best describes the Canucks at midseason? Overachieving, underachieving? You can vote at the Sakaris and Price X and YouTube channels.
Yeah, there's still people with some misconceptions on what overachieving means. Again, considering the drama around this team. The only comparable team with that level of drama, the New York Rangers, who are below NHL 500 at 19-20-2, sitting on 40 points on the season in 41 games. Other teams that were hoping to make big strides this year, invested in making those big strides, like the Predators, like the Wings, teams developing like the Sabres and Islanders, all of them way below the Vancouver Canucks. So all this drama, and it's funny, they're in the responses already to the poll question. If you click on the tweet, they've been terrible. You should have an option for terrible. So all these people are saying how terrible the Canucks have been. So you think they've played terrible? They're in a playoff spot. Like that's again. You think they've played terrible, but they're in a playoff spot. So there's all that room for improvement.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Edmonton lost last night.
Yeah.
Vegas lost last night. The Canucks are 5 points back of the Kings for third place in the Pacific. LA has 2 games in hand. They are 7 back of Edmonton for second place and home ice advantage in the first round.
They've got a game in hand, yeah.
Owning a game in hand over Edmonton, and they are 13 back of Vegas with a game in hand. Is a chance at repeating at division winners, is that already lost?
Probably.
Is Vegas free and clear?
Probably.
Okay. Is second place
the
ceiling?
Second place is the ceiling, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How realistic is second place?
I mean, in a vacuum, you'd say mathematically it's not crazy at all. I mean, the Canucks still have not gone on a prolonged winning streak this season. Four is the top. Like, again, good playoff teams generally have a 6 or 7 gamer in there. Canucks have not had that yet. Never mind if you go on a run like the Oilers did last season. In fact, the Oilers went on 2 double-digit runs last year. So never mind if they can somehow manufacture that. But just even a modest, again, regular teams have 6-7 game winning streaks. Like, that does happen. And the Canucks have not yet had that. They do that, they're immediately back alongside those two teams who have all done that already. Like, those teams have had their streaks. They have not had their adversity. So, and hey, sometimes teams don't have adversity. Again, the Canucks last season really did not have a ton of adversity. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of those two teams, and I'm talking about the Oilers and Kings, maybe they just won't have adversity this year. But I'm going to bet one of them does. One of those two teams will have some level of adversity, whether it be injury, just poor play, what have you. If that coincides with the Canucks having finally one of their win streaks of the season, then they're right back there.
Now, let's look from bottom up, where I think there is actually a more glass half full view for the Canucks. I agree.
About where the floor is, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I say that because I'm with you. I think Vegas is going to be very tough to catch at this point. I think there's a world where they can catch Edmonton. Pettersson coming back, Roenick coming back, add an addition by the deadline, although I think Edmonton's going to be active there as well. And I know the Kings have won 4 in a row. They have that exemplary home record, 14-2-1 now at home for the LA Kings at ex-Staples Crypto. But I'm still not entirely drinking the LA Kings Kool-Aid here. Colorado on the first wild card spot. Also 7 points better than the Vancouver Canucks, albeit having played 3 additional games, so it's a little out of whack there. Then you look at who's chasing Vancouver. Calgary 1 point back in the same number of games. St. Louis 2 points back, having played 3 more games. Utah 4 points back, 5 points back, playing the same number of games. I am just not all that afraid of any of those 3. Is it conceivable that Calgary and the young netminder there, Wolf, just continues to have an awesome season, steals games, keeps them right there in the thick of it, and they pluck Vancouver or somebody off for a wild card at the end? Yep. That's conceivable. I would bet against that. St. Louis, as mentioned, you've played 3 additional games. I mean, I guess, is there a world where Cam Fowler gets more ingratiated, indoctrinated into that lineup? Binnington plays better, I suppose, but J-Pat has been calling St. Louis the definition of mediocre all season long, and I think that's fair. Utah was the one club that I might worry about a little more for a couple of reasons there, and incidentally, they're opening more seats in that arena. They're now opening the upper deck. $10 you get in. There's a lot of obstructed views and all that. $10 you get in, and you get some concessions there as well with the new owner. And I know the new owner is really rolling out the red carpet there with Utah. But I say Utah for a couple of reasons, Blake. Number one, they have young players that I would not be surprised if they took steps forward in the second half of the season.
They don't know any better?
Well, no, but just guys that that are in ascension. Logan Cooley's 20. And sadly, now they lose Dylan Guenther, who's 21. He's going to be out of the line.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Now, those players often are the ones fingered to fade down the stretch, though, because they are playing 85 games.
Well, except for those guys have now been in the NHL a couple years, right? Like,
a little more conditions.
I think rookie wall, you maybe look at it and say rookie wall's a little in the rear view mirror for those guys. And of course, Cooley's one of the best young up and coming centers in the NHL. Anyways, so I would almost fear Utah the most of those 3 hockey clubs who are chasing the Vancouver Canucks. But we'll see. We'll see if any of those teams have the juice to move on up. We had talked about this, even a month, 6 weeks ago, there was a world where you could look at it and say, wow, like the Western Conference playoff race is almost a fait accompli. Like, maybe there will be one team that comes from below the bar and rises.
Did you mention
up.
that projection for the points in the East? With the wild card
No, I
bar
haven't.
is? Right now, 84 points is the projection. Is the extrapolation.
That's extraordinary.
Folks, there's been most year. I mean, the rule of thumb to make the playoffs
Is 94.
94 usually.
Yeah.
Like
That
if you
would
get
be
94, you should be pretty
extraordinary.
confident you make the playoffs. But
Yeah.
there's years where that even hasn't worked.
And honestly, like that is parity going too far. That is, you have a lot of average teams.
Well, that is true. The lower middle class is large in the East. Here's what they don't have. They don't have any lower class in the East. All of the three worst teams in the league are in the West. Ergo, all those points are donated to the middle class of the Western Conference. Literally, the three worst teams in the league are in the West, in the Predators, the Sharks, and the Blackhawks. And they're the worst by a few wins each, at least. So that's why that looks like that does. But can that hold? Like, is a team with 86 points going to make the playoffs? Preposterous.
I voted underachieving on the poll. I mean, I said my piece on Monday. But even if the Canucks were to win tonight, they would be on pace for 96 points. There were 109 points last year. And if you want to get into process, we've talked about how few shots on goal they have, which, okay, that's fine if you're getting more rush chances. They're not doing that. Team defense has slipped a little bit. It's not just that the goaltending hasn't been quite as lights out as it was in the first half of last season. So I voted underachieving. And yet, as I said yesterday, I still am quite bullish on the Canucks in the second half if they get healthy, if they make that trade line acquisition. The caveat, of course, being that the room has been poisoned here by everything that's happened in the Miller-Pettersson rift, and they just can't get over that, or they're sitting there waiting for that to be solved by management, which I think would also be something difficult to overcome. If, somebody's just waiting to get tapped on the shoulder, or multiple players, because, of course, it wouldn't have to be a simple one-for-one. There was reports this week that the discussions with the Rangers on Miller and Zibanejad were not one-for-one, that Schneider was involved on the New York side and that maybe others were involved on the Vancouver side as well. So if you've got some players there that are infinitely distracted, guys like Höglander who think, oh boy, like any minute now they're going to tap me on the shoulder and say that's that, we're moving you to wherever, then I think that would be tough to overcome.
The other second half to keep in mind this weekend, folks, is the Canucks' record in the second half of back-to-back games. They are winless all season on the second half, so things are looking good for them tonight. Backup goaltender, tired Canes team.
5-7, 3-4, Carolina. Like, this has been a huge ask of the Hurricanes.
So I am not counting chickens before they're hatched, but let's just go down the road. Canucks get a win tonight.
Our friends at Surrey Mitsubishi have a special program exclusively for the Harrison Price audience. If you've been turned down for financing at other dealerships, Surrey Mitsubishi will assign a dedicated representative who's committed to get you approved through their in-house financing program. Jessica from Surrey Mitsubishi. She will be your shepherd. She will assist in getting you approved on a new Mitsubishi. Bad credit, negative equity on your current car. Jessica will apply the special program for you and do everything possible to make sure you are approved. Email Jessica at surreymitsubishi.com. Make sure you mention Harrison Price to get in on this program. Some conditions apply. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue. And thank you to Daniel and Arash and Jessica and everybody there who's going to help get some Harrison Price listeners in new Mitsubishis.
Can I finish my sentence now? That was a
done.
comma. That was a comma. Assume that they win tonight. The second half of the back-to-backs is where the rubber will hit the road, because if they win tonight and they do what they've been doing all season long, drop in the second half, they are no further ahead. And am I calling for a sweep of these two games? Yeah, I am. If they sweep these two games back to back, I think they're going to inject a lot of belief into the fan base and to critics. But if they just get the easy one, the low-hanging fruit tonight, and then drop the second half for will that be the fifth back-to-back second half back-to-back loss? I mean, you're no further ahead. You are back to treading water NHL 500.
Mike, did you perceive that as a comma?
Yes, you did.
You did?
It was pretty funny. It was full cutoff.
I thought I was the guy who did dramatic pauses on this show, Blake. You typically don't go that
hand up
route.
like this, like I was mid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Only one of us can Shatner here, okay, and that's me.
Now you may talk.
Apologies. I've put myself on easy nose for interrupting during the comma. Sounded more semicolon to me, frankly.
Still, then I'm about to list. Let me list.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, where the rubber hits the road trip 0-2 with this back-to-back in Carolina and Toronto upcoming. God help us all if they don't win either of these games, because Monday's show at that point takes a bit of a turn towards Chicken Little Avenue, no?
Well, there's one other scenario that gets kind of interesting just by, I don't know, morbid curiosity. If they OTL both of these.
The 0-5 roadie?
Becomes a possibility.
Has there ever been an 0-5 roadie?
Well, just what would be the longest OTL streak in NHL history? It's probably around that vicinity, I would guess.
You know what? You talk, I'm going to look that up.
Like, since the advent, remember, we haven't had OTLs for that long against the backdrop of the entire National Hockey League. But I think this is the kind of team that would be perfectly capable of that. For all of our criticisms of the Canucks, they don't get blown out that often. There's been a couple. But they keep games close. Like, this is a team built for this record. So, in absence of back-to-back wins and the Canucks turning their season around on a dime and the return to full health, which would be, that's the rosiest picture here for the Canucks this weekend. They get Demko back, they get Pettersson back, and it catapults them to back-to-back victories. In absence of that, 2 more OTLs, please.
I can find 4-game streaks.
Is it merely 4? The Canucks can do that easily.
This is this is an obscure one, partner.
Yeah,
I'm going to need a little more time here to find this, because you.
We'll put it on Ease and Nose. We'll circle back on the weekend with hopes that maybe
Well,
it's
I'm
still
not
alive.
even sure we can get it. You know what? We should give J-Pat an assignment here. He loves that stuff. Okay. You mentioned the third-string goalie. Dustin Tokarski is going to start in goal for the Carolina Hurricanes. And if the name sounds familiar, he is a journeyman goaltender, 35 years old. He played here in the Western League. 35. Played on a Canadian World Junior team once upon a time. Got his start with Tampa Bay back in 2009. Played a couple of games. Then it was off to Montreal for a few seasons. He had a single game in Anaheim. He had a couple years of backup duty in Buffalo. He was in Pittsburgh last year for a minute. So, like, this guy has been around. He's played 84 National Hockey League games. And with all the activity that the Hurricanes have been asked to do by the schedule here, he's going to get the start. Did we see who the Canucks are starting?
Very little news of the Canucks. It doesn't look like the couple of beat reporters that were on the trip made it to the morning skate. The questions being asked in the morning scrum were by the Canuck employees themselves.
Yeah, Canucks PR. Okay. Nevertheless, you're going to see Demko, you're going to see Lankinen here in these back-to-backs. We have long talked about how Rod Brindamore and Rick talk at like two peas in a pod, right? Right down to the face, right down to the toughness, right down to the Philadelphia Flyer, and yet they couldn't be more different in terms of the way they preach offensive hockey. Brindamore is put everything on net, pepper the goaltender. We'll get some tips. We'll get some deflections. We'll get some rebounds. We'll score the ugly, muckraking goals down by the crease. 31.9 shots per game for the Carolina Hurricanes. It is second in the National Hockey League behind only Edmonton. And then on the flip, and of course, as we know, Tocchet, or at least until Wednesday, we'll see if this is in evolution a little bit. Tocchet, hang on to the puck in the offensive zone. That works as a defensive tactic. Let's move it around and try and find those grade A's. So shot quality over shot quantity. Then the other side, Carolina, second in the league, 25.4 shots against. And so, you see the analytics at play here, right, Blake? We average 6.5 more shots per game than our opponent. Over the long stretch of the season, that should equate to more wins. As we also know, Carolina is amongst these teams that flip the puck up on high to the neutral zone, right? Don't want to risk the icing, so flip that puck up on high, and we'll see if we can win battles for it in the neutral zone as much as Tocchet, who wants to dump it deep, and let's go see if we can win battles for it in the corners and below their goal line. So it should be a pretty good clash of styles here.
Right, but does that mean it will be stagnant and nothing, or does that mean that the clash of styles will create chaos and open hockey?
Well, they're going to put the puck on goal. That much you can be assured. So how do the goaltenders manage for Vancouver? And then, how does the defense do in the net front area? Because that's key. I mean, it's a key battleground anytime in the NHL, but I think it's even more pronounced, more acute against these Carolina
Canucks are good at blocking shots,
Hurricanes.
So that could be a benefit to them. But as we've talked about with the Redwoods on the Canucks D, they don't like the pucks in their skates. So on rebounds, if the puck comes out and the big guys are out there, are they able to dig that puck out of their skates and make a pass or make a clearance?
Right.
That will be interesting.
Then there's Quinn Hughes. And we're going to get to did you see Spector's tweet last night?
No.
Oh, okay. So you'll go in cold. We're going to get to that in a second about Elias. First, Noah Strang from Offside in the Daily Hive. Want an idea of how good Quinn Hughes is? He leads the league in virtually every advanced stat when compared against his teammates. This is compared against his teammates. So Corsi 4. 16.74 better than his next teammate on the Vancouver Canucks. That's
remarkable.
That's the largest gap in the National Hockey League.
I would think.
Relative shots for 14.79 better than his next teammate. That leads the National Hockey League. Expected goals for 13.75 better than his next teammate. Again, that gap leads the National Hockey League, and Noah also throws in goals for percentage, where he's 20.91 better than his closest teammate. That's only fifth in the NHL.
He might be too small to play in the NHL, though, man.
Yeah. So anyways, Quinn Hughes playing through this hand injury, and that's where we're going to go next with this spicy Spector tweet. But first, tell me what Yellow Dog and Neighborhood are up to.
Well, we've told you to make sure that they're your beer for Après. The best thing for Après, by the way, you get a mix pack. That way, all your friends are all covered for their different beer tastes. Or you can spice it up, of course. So grab not one, but two delicious, refreshing mix packs from Yellow Dog. There's the Hi There Hard Iced Tea mix pack. That's lemon, peach, raspberry teas. And the Freezy Vodka Soda mix pack, including purple, blue, and white Freezy. Lots of options packed into two mix packs, all from Yellow Dog.
Mark Spector in Edmonton. of Sportsnet, who does like to stick his nose and his pen into other markets.
Boy, does he ever, just to make things interesting.
Yeah. That said, I do think he's got a point here. JT Miller playing hurt, battling. Did I send you this tweet, Mike? I might have forgotten to send you this tweet.
It's up.
The visual. Oh, okay, great. JT Miller playing hurt, battling. Quinn Hughes logs 27 minutes playing hurt. Pettersson cleared to play by the doctor, but not playing. On any team I've ever been around, that would be an issue. Fair? He got Canuck Twitter up in arms last night, and I understand why.
What was could you aggregate what the sentiment was for, outside of stay out of our business? I'm sure there's a lot of that, but what was the pushback from Canuck Nation?
Well, I think the pushback from Canuck Nation was simply that, hey, if Elias isn't ready to go, we take him at his word, and that's that.
Right.
He'll be there for the next game.
And that's reasonable. That's a totally sane thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
But in a room, are you saying it's a non-zero chance that there are guys in the room that are looking and going, if he's cleared to play, why isn't he playing? I think there's a quotient.
Absolutely. And I particularly think there's a quotient because I think JT Miller has a lot of followers in the Canucks room.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his clique. And therein is part of the problem. I do believe there are cliques. There's a Miller clique. There's a Pettersson clique. And I also, as I have wondered all week, and really since all this business started, I do wonder whether the Vancouver Canucks have lost Elias in terms of, you remember when Patrick Alvin used to talk a lot about trust? The players have to trust you. He'd say things like, the players have to feel, trust, like they're safe in the ring. He'd message in like a very HR sort of way.
Yeah, he used the word safe, I remember.
Safe and trust. Mm. I wonder whether Elias feels he can trust the organization around him after everything that has been said. Because his preference was just to keep this under the rug. And not only did the Vancouver Canucks let it escape from under the rug, they did so intentionally. The captain and the coach talked about it. Coach even said, why don't you request him for media? Then the GM came out and lambasted him, including on preparation. Now he's sitting there listening to daily the insiders. I mean, today it's the TSN trade board. Who's number one on the list? Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, one of the two. Now he has to listen to all this trade chatter around his name. So, yeah, I am at the point where I wonder, where's Elias at with this organization, with this room, with this coaching staff? And there was yet again, for some, a veiled shot from Rick Tocchet. I don't know. He was cleared to play. Give him one more. And Tocchet couched a little bit. Okay, give him one more morning skate, one more day, one more pregame prep. But once again, sounding like the coach and Elias are not on the same page with regards to his injury. So I'm wondering, have they completely lost him? And the second thing I'm wondering is he done bleeding for this franchise if he thinks a trade is coming, either now or in the offseason?
I think we're going to get the answer to that in the next week.
That's why this weekend for Elias and frankly, this run-up to the Four Nations and then the 2 weeks thereafter in advance of the trade deadline, I think are critical.
But
I think this is the evaluation period where you look at it if you're Alvin and Rutherford and say, okay, we can repair this or mask this, but we can get through the remainder of this season and still feel in good conscience that we have a shot in the playoffs. If it goes the other way, then I think you owe it to yourselves, to your coaches, to your players, to the owner, to the organization, to the fans, to say, no, this is irreparable, and we can't go forward and just sacrifice this spring. We have to make a move by the deadline with one of them.
There could be a devil's advocate here, though. This is a guy that is under the microscope from fans and media with everything that he does right now. And if he thinks that his performance will be impacted, and we don't know what's going on with Elias Pettersson. Zero hints as to what the ailment is here. And if we knew, maybe it would color our opinion on whether or not this is a possibility. But if he thinks that he's going to be impacted to a decent degree, even if he's not at risk, and again, to get medically cleared, you'd have to say there's no risk of further damage, and he should be capable of doing his duty. But of course, the player knows pain level, and ultimately whether or not that's going to... When you're trying to do something physical, and you know you're expecting pain, this is coming from a guy that does that with his golf swing every time, it can mess with you. So if he's thinking, I know it's going to impact my play, why am I going to put myself back into the line of fire right now when I know I'm not ready, when it's going to look poorly on me and there's going to be judgment and analysis that he's not playing well? Well, I'm going to come back when I know I can perform.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a play here.
And as we discussed yesterday, that is completely plausible and understandable. But it's understandable to you and me.
Right.
Is it understandable to guys in the room?
Is it global?
Is it understandable to guys and in a culture where you play with all sorts of physical ailment and impairment?
Let me ask you this. With this apparent split, do you think Canucks fans are at all placated, warmed by news out of Boston that there is a Brad Marchand,
was getting there.
David Pastrnak split? Dude, does misery love company?
To answer your question,
especially with that franchise, for God's sake.
To answer your question, abso-fucking-lutely. And here's why. It's that franchise.
And it's those two guys.
And it's that fucking guy, Marchand.
Yeah.
He of the pantomiming cup and kissing the ring and all that at Rogers.
Little different dynamic. You could draw a line in personality types from Marchand to Miller. Pastrnak is not as quiet and as unassuming as Pettersson.
Mercurial. At least I didn't think so.
No.
But now Pastrnak, the star winger of the Boston Bruins, says he doesn't want to play on the same line with Brad Marchand.
Well, that's the report. He has not said it. Yeah.
And frankly, I think Canucks fans will be like, yes, please, Elliott, CJ, LeBron, Drager, everybody, go dissect the Boston soap opera like you've dissected our soap opera. I want to see Brad Marchand or David Pastrnak at the top of the trade bait board.
Toy Maker in the chat would love Marchand on the Canucks. Is that the deal now? Miller
I can't.
for Marchand and Zaka. Who says no?
No, I can't.
I think the Canucks did.
I can't. I can't say no. That would be Messier on steroids. You're bringing that guy in? There was a time when I think you could argue absolutely hate him, but would love him on your team. I am no longer at the love him on my team point of view on Brad Marchand.
He has an 8-team no-trade list. Do you think the Canucks are one of the
and he's UFA after this.
Do you think the Canucks are one of his 8-team no-trades?
No, because I think he probably knows he doesn't have to include them. Why waste a spot on Vancouver?
Right.
There's no fucking way. Yeah, I mean, 33 points in 44 games. He's still decent, but the last 2 years he's been in the 60-point range. Brad Marchand.
He's had a miraculous
the guy in
career.
The 80-point range is one that I might have held my nose and said, okay, if you can make a good deal there. But no, now that you're in the 60-point range, he'll be 37, Blake, in May. So
okay, somebody else in the chat just said pasta for Petey.
Oh my gosh! Well,
Jordan,
that's one that I threw at you.
No move for Pastrnak, so you'd have to be involved. But
yeah, and
winger though, right?
And winger.
He's a creating winger. He does create from the wing, but he's a winger. He is so.
Mm-hmm. So no, I don't think so. I mean,
but he's one of the
trade expands.
There
perhaps?
are 3 to 4 wingers, I would say, in the NHL that could vie for a heart. And he's one of them.
Kucherov.
Yeah, Kaprizov.
Well, Kaprizov this year.
Yeah,
Pastrnak.
and I think Pasternak's on that short list.
Yeah. Well, look, I understand where Brad Marchand would rank in Bruins lore. He was a key member of a Stanley Cup champion for you. He helped underpin a very good and successful period of Boston Bruins hockey. Your fans loved him in part because every other fan base absolutely hated the guy. But he's 37 and a UFA to be. You're keeping David Pastrnak. Like, there is no. Whereas the Canucks JT Miller Pettersson question is a little more, excuse me, a little more complicated by the fact that, Tocchet, Rutherford, playoff performance, all of that, might prefer Miller. This one is cut and dry, Blake. You're keeping David Pastrnak and you're moving on Brad Marchand. And boy, it seems like the problems was more than just the coach in Boston this year.
Yeah,
by the sounds of it.
But again, the comparable there is it's a team that didn't expect to struggle to score goals at the rate that they are struggling to score goals, and not being able to score unless your identity is completely surrounding that. A la Jacques Lemaire's Devils. And like, if we will score a few goals, but we will win cup. Unless your identity is that, I think not scoring offense really festers on a team.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
it's the name of the game.
We had Gillis in here this week.
Yeah.
It's the joy of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you have a obligation to the audience, to the enterprise, to try and make it fun, exciting, entertaining, worth their time and money. We put Rantanen and Marner on the list of wingers that could win a Hart. Maybe more Mikko because he's a goal scorer.
More.
Yeah. Marner's honestly like a centerman who plays wing.
He's an exceptional player. I'm not saying he's not. I just don't know that he would get the perception of dragging a team anywhere.
He was -6 last night.
Was he really? Yeah.
They had two players who were -6 last night.
That was my Bet365. Remember, I had that one.
Did you win it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow! Look at you.
Yeah.
Circling back to Carolina here. Let's remember, it was about 11 months ago. They made a call on Petey. They made a call. So there are two schools of thought on this. Number one, it was a boogeyman made up by the Canucks, or there was a call or something minor that got leaked and turned into, Carolina's making a push for Elias Pettersson, which got Elias to the bargaining table. And yes, Jim Rutherford used to manage the Carolina Hurricanes, so connect the dots as you see fit. Or there was legitimate interest in Elias Pettersson from the Carolina Hurricanes, and they came with a proposal or at least a discussion that made the Canucks think. That was not a full period, no, hang up the phone. That was okay, let's bring this to our scouts. Let's bring this to our personnel department and see what people think. So two schools of thought there. If you believe that it was authentic and legitimate, is there a world where the Carolina Hurricanes make a second play for Elias Pettersson, either before the deadline or this summer?
Yeah, I think this summer is a possibility. I think things are going well enough for them right now that they wouldn't make something so seismic of a change.
They've been okay this year.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I mean,
no,
they're a franchise used to winning, in the regular season. So I don't think they're looking at their regular season and feeling that great about it.
I mean, there's only two pieces that work in that trade for the Vancouver Canucks, I think.
Well, they're capped out too, we should note.
Yeah, so you need a big ticket, and there's only two names that sort of fit that bill, and it's Aho with the no move or Martin Necas, but he's a winger again. So, I just don't see an easy fit there. They've got no high-end
So you don't think
defenseman.
Kotkaniemi plus is still...
No.
Okay.
If Kotkaniemi had taken another step this year, I would be intrigued there, but he is not.
He looks like he's just forever going to be a 40-point two-way guy. Maybe a very good third-line centerman, who knows, but not truly a 2C.
Not going to live up to draft day.
No, well, and he was a bit of a reach in that spot anyway, so I think Montreal wanted a center iceman in that spot, much like they may have reached for Reinbacher as well, a right shot defenseman, much like the Canucks may have reached for a right shot defenseman in Wielander, although coming off the World Junior, I think you got to feel better about that. I asked just because I think if there was anything going on with Carolina, it would probably be something that gets picked up after the game, right?
After the season.
No, after this game in particular, you play each other, and okay, now because the Canucks didn't want to. I think if you're moving one of these players, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, there's probably a fair chance in season. It's probably a fair chance you're moving them east, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, you're talking about the Carolina Hurricanes season. I mean, they're 10 games above 500, 52 points. They got plus 23 goal differential. Like, they're cooking with gas. Like, they're doing just fine. They are 2 points back a second in their division, and they're still 6 back of the Capitals, who are the belle of the ball this year. So, they're having a good season. I don't think they're shaking anything up majorly here.
Okay. I've perceived them more around as a team that should be vying for President's trophies than home ice, but maybe they still could.
They're 6 points back of that. I mean, they're 6 points back of the President's Trophy right now. It's not terrible.
All right. Where was I? Oh, yes. Out of Chicago, Scott Powers of The Athletic. You've brought Taylor Hall up to me.
I don't recall that. In an acquisition for the Canucks?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I must have had context there. That doesn't. I don't love the player.
Blake hasn't brought Taylor Hall up, but the Canucks, in a perfect world, if they are just keeping the two centers and they're making additions. Dreger has mentioned this to us. Scoring winger has been one.
Retaining salary, that sort of thing. Sure, yeah, by all means, yeah.
So Powers of The Athletic reports that Chicago may move Taylor Hall for as little as a second or a third round pick.
Okay, in these contacts with retained salary, yeah.
He's a $6 million player, so I don't think Vancouver is going to be shooting its cap space wad for this player.
No.
But 50% retention makes it a more digestible. Hall does have a 10-team no-trade list. He's a former, of course, NHL MVP. 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points in 40 games. So he's basically a 40 half-point per game guy.
Well, right? And also if you throw Nylander or Höglander going the other way,
skate?
If you throw Höglander going the other way, and you get 50% retention, then you're getting them for $2 million difference.
Yep. And, of course, at his best, in his heyday, if he's something that he was a fast skater who scored off the rush. And God knows the Vancouver Canucks could use fast skaters who score off the rush, albeit the first step might be defensemen who can actually get them the puck.
Yeah.
Defensemen beyond Quinn Hughes and Philip Roenick when he plays, who can actually get wingers the puck, particularly in flight.
I think he has been accused, certainly going back to his younger years. I haven't heard an update on this in the last handful of years, but never a guy that could play in structure. Wasn't a guy that was coached at a junior level. He was allowed under Doug Gilmour to play however the hell he wanted, basically, because he was so good back then. So whether that would fit in with a Rick Tocchet, I mean, again, as an older player, mature player, maybe he's changed this about his game, but I would be a little bit worried. I'd want to be convinced that he would be able to play within the structure.
And it's funny because I covered him at the World Juniors, and I was sitting beside a scout for much of that tournament, and the scout turned to me as we were watching Taylor Hall shift one day and said, he reminds me of Guy Lafleur in that you just have to get him the puck, and just everybody's sort of that he's going to be that solo agent.
Rover.
Get him the puck, let him go and play. He even talked about how Hall skates like a young Lafleur did, low and powerful.
Jersey flap a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. If he had the hair too. Maybe not quite the same shot as Guy era adjusted there, because Lafleur could really shoot it back in the 70s. And, of course, we don't score goals from distance in the NHL much anymore. But, yeah, that sort of offensive player on the wing that you make accommodations for because they are that good an offensive player. He is not that player anymore.
No.
He is not that player anymore. And I do wonder, you're concerned about playing within the structure. I wonder if that's why Chicago might be willing to just give him away. They'll look at a $6 million price tag and they go, okay, there's name value here, but he's not playing within the structure. Our young superstar is frustrated with what's going on here. He was, worth the shot, worth the shout to see if he had chemistry with Bedard, but it's not working at a level, or not at a level that we had hoped, and so let's move him on and just recoup a draft pick.
He'd be a more accomplished Daniel Sprong, effectively.
Who cleared waivers yesterday.
Yeah.
How about that? Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta Bar. And we've been telling you all week, January 23rd at Greta, 50 West Cordova, our next Canucks Army watch party. Please join us. Thrilling evening. Vancouver takes on Edmonton, a rivalry night. There's going to be exciting giveaways, including hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, jerseys to be won. The doors open at 5. The puck drops at 6. And this is in support of One Broken Bike, our charitable partner for the evening. VIP 4-person reservations include entry into the event, a Greta burger, and they're terrific burgers, and a beverage plus a game card for the arcade. Don't miss out. Tickets, nationgear.ca. Nationgear.ca. Get your tickets. And we'll see you on the 23rd at Greta, 50 West Cordova. We have the one guest today. We wanted to do a shorter show, give you time to consume everything before the puck drop. Jeff Marek is going to join us. And it is always a terrific conversation with Jeff. We go through where the Canucks stand at the midseason. We go through the Pettersson and Miller business. We go through suitors for Miller, Pettersson. We go through, okay, let's say they do construct a trade. What's left at that point? Not to mention Hockey Canada player selection. If you thought it was bad at the World Juniors, take a look how the Four Nations goaltenders are sizing up versus the Four Nations goaltenders candidates they left off the team. So all that's coming up with Marek. Looking forward to it. Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. Now, I picked an NFL playoff game yesterday, but my Notre Dame shout came through. But you told me you won on the Toronto game last night. Okay, go ahead. I will cede the honor.
And I'm just going to have to act quickly here. The Canucks are getting some pretty good numbers here, and in the 20 minutes that I've had the window open, it got better on me. As I speak to you now, plus 150 on the Canucks tonight over the Hurricanes. Given the
straight up win, Carolina 3-4, 5-7, third string goaltender.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus 150. I mean, if you wait till game time, it might get better.
It might. We talked about Carolina's shots and shots against. One of the means of preventing shots against, of course, is the block shot.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Vancouver finally getting a game with 30 shots against Washington. Hadn't done that in a year or a month, sorry. And that we think they may be endeavoring here to put more pucks on net, recognizing this as a weakness. Jacob Slavin is going to play a lot. He's going to play a lot against Vancouver's top scorers, right? Over 1.5 block shots for Slavin pace at plus 120.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Jeff Marek coming up next. Scarson Price from the Historic Wall Center, now joined by Jeff Marek, host of The Sheet, which you can find on the Nation Network daily at noon Pacific time. And the feathers look pretty good today, buddy. Must
Feathers
say.
look bad. No, because I'm getting the Widow's Peak going. I'm gonna have to Getzlaff this, Messier this eventually. I'm putting off the inevitable guys, and you guys have
As
the
we all
beautiful S&P hats that I just adore, and I've psychologically tried to lure one to my homestead here, so I go because I think it's one of the best things we have on the Nation Network as far as gear goes. But look at this beauty. want to see something?
Oh my
cool?
goodness.
I was. How about this one?
What's the gig
so
there?
That is the Oilers. I don't know. I don't even know how the Oilers sent this to me. I think it's James the Real Deal Neal hat. Oilers colors. I know you gentlemen mainly deal with the Vancouver Canucks here on this property, but
good colors.
As I am hatless in Stouffville here, I always find it cool when teams personalize hats or shirts or jackets or anything for individual players on it. This is when the Oilers had made for James Real Deal Neal. The cards, the orange, the blue, the James Neal face. Anyhow.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's what I have to offer you by way of headgear as I run a little, I guess, sort of amateur haberdasher, I suppose, here. In case things don't work out in broadcasting.
Well, if I remember James Neal, he used to hit people in the head, so that could work as some extra protection.
Did
wow.
too.
Yeah.
James was a sneaky,
He was a
dirty
headshot
player,
guy.
sneaky,
Yeah, he
tough
was.
player too. A great wrist shot. Boy, could he ever fire that thing. Yeah, I always admired how he could score from distance. Yeah, but he wasn't shy out there. You're not wrong about that one. You're not wrong.
So Canucks on the final playoff spot here. Pettersson seems like he's back any minute now.
Yeah.
How worried are you about this team, or are you in the boat? And we've heard from a lot of fans, hey, just get healthy. This is a pretty good team. What says you, Jeff?
This is a good team, but I think we're all waiting for shoes to drop here, aren't we? Like I think that, and the blue line is certainly one issue. And having someone other than Quinn Hughes who can move the puck back there is one issue. But I think we're all wondering here when either one or two shoes, potentially, according to Elliott last Saturday on Hockey Night, are going to end up dropping here. Like, make no mistake about it, and we all know Rutherford's reputation. You guys know this a lot better than I do. I still think this is a team that makes the playoffs. I don't really by the sky is falling Chicken Little routine about the Vancouver Canucks. But I think the overriding story here is I think we're all waiting for something to happen. Like Rutherford doesn't let things like this sit very long when he makes his mind up. And it sounds as if we're getting to that point if we're not already there.
Yeah, do you think they can be the team they hope to be as they wait for shoes to drop? Like, would you be what's the urgency level there? In terms of if you have a room that's looking around going, okay, someone's going and someone's coming, like historically that hasn't often been a great recipe for success in the here and now. You know what I mean?
I don't want to get rushed into it. I mean, everybody knows it. Like everybody knows the situation in Vancouver. Everybody knows with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, and like every room has talked about it, every management staff has talked about it, every fan base has talked about it, and wonders, if one or two of these players could fit in their lineup, and if so, how. So it's the worst kept secret in the NHL. It's went from whispers to screams. So I really do wonder, again, like I'm not in the room, so I don't know how that's affecting all the players. I don't know how that's affecting decisions. I don't know how that's affecting how this team manages itself on a day-to-day basis. But that's where the captain comes in. That's where the coach comes in and says either, yeah, we're good, don't rush into a move, or we need to do something here because this is distressing the team.
Yeah, and of course, the other thing they got going for them, you would have to really believe in a Calgary, a St. Louis, a Utah, right?
Yeah.
Just in terms of the Western playoff field, like the East, Jeff, we
yeah.
were talking about that schmozzle in the East, and like, I don't like any of those teams. Like, I don't like. To me, that's an argument against expanding the postseason field. Like, there is not a single team in that wild card or below Eastern Conference field that I think has a hope as a cup team. But in the West, like I think the depth of good team is better. But once you get past the playoff bar, I think there's really only three contenders there to potentially leapfrog the Canucks or whomever is in that final wild.
I still don't believe that Craig Conroy is taking eyes off the prize and sees the long term of what he's trying to accomplish here. And these wins are great, and staying relevant as deep into the season as possible is great for the young players.
We've seen this before, though. You're right. Yeah.
Right, like, and we all know how this one ends, and Craig Conroy's been around longer than 5 minutes, and he knows how these things play out. So I don't think that he's eyes off the prize here and what the long-term plan is. And teams will come calling. Make no mistake about it. Whether it's knock the door on Nazem Kadri, knock the door on Rasmus Anderson, knock the door on Exhibit CDE. We all know what the program is in Calgary. Utah fascinates me. I don't know how many times I can get false started on Utah and just start believing, and then have the football yanked away. Lucy and Charlie Brown style with Utah. At times I say to myself, this team's healthy and they get goaltending, they'll be right in there. And then other times I say there's still too much coyote here, and that it's still not Utah, and they're still not quite ready for that next step. So yeah, you're right. Like you really have to believe, and St. Louis is the same way. Like you really have to believe that one of these teams can distinguish themselves and go on a run. And based on what we've seen so far, and based on what we believe about Calgary, I don't see it. I don't see it happening. Now, can Vancouver bottom out, and take things for granted and say, oh yeah, we're going to be tucked away, look at everyone underneath us? Yeah, certainly. But, all things being equal, unless the wheels completely come off the wagon for Vancouver, I think they'll be fine, pending what we all think is probably marching towards an inevitability here.
The dirty laundry being aired was an interesting experiment for me, because I think we saw what happened with New York. I've got the record 12-7 etched in my mind. That's where they were when the Drury memo was leaked. And we saw how they quickly spiraled after that. So as soon as the Miller-Pettersson stuff became public, I thought, oh my goodness, is that the Drury memo Vancouver style? And this is from an organization, Jeff, that has done everything to stop leaks from happening prior to this, including kicking Murph and Shorty and Dave and Ray off the charter to just ensure that nothing was ever leaked. And I believe they've even dismissed people because of that as well. So to me, it's an interesting play, because it looks like it was intentional. Like it looks like they wanted to have this out there and maybe try to either shame them, drive the market up, what have you. There seemed to be some method to this madness.
Yeah, see the difference between the two, it's interesting too, because we've seen these two teams go through very public drama. The interesting thing about both of them, one is, it's easy to get players' backs up about management, and it's another when it's teammates and someone that you play next to, travel with, check into hotels with, and pass the puck to. So while one issue of anger with the Rangers was directed upwards, the issue here was sideways, right? The issue here wasn't vertical; it was horizontal for the Vancouver Canucks, and maybe that's why they didn't completely self-destruct when they had and are still going through a very public airing of their laundry. How about that?
We've heard so many teams connected to either Miller or to Pettersson, and, Dreger told us on Monday, every team is called. Like, Patrick Alvin has dealt with 31 teams here at least.
Which is always the proverbial phrase, 31 teams would be interested. Literally 31 teams.
Literally, like he has had to, exchange pleasantries with 31 other GMs in the last couple of weeks. Do you see any realistic in-season fits for either Elias or for JT, assuming he'd waive, of course?
Yeah, and I always wonder, to Drager's point too, you wonder about the surprise teams that we didn't see coming. Like, everybody's married JT Miller to the New York Rangers for all of the obvious reasons. That's the obvious conversation. I always wonder about who else would be out there. You guys know, once upon a time, the Pittsburgh Penguins were very interested in JT Miller. That was with Ron Hextall. However, I don't think Kyle Dubas is looking for JT Miller.
Aging star is not Kyle Dubas' kind of thing.
That's not. He's looking for second chance players in between the ages of 23 and 26 or 22 and 25. That seems to be, whether you look at all the recent acquisitions, Glass and Tomasino and Joseph and all that. That seems to be the sweet spot for Dubas on his second chances. They want young players, they want prospects, and they want picks. But that's the sweet spot, that age group for players they want initially. So you do wonder, okay, if it's the Rangers, sure, but who else for JT Miller? I think this is interesting because we can all play fantasy general manager, and and I think rightfully so. A lot of people have wondered about the Buffalo Sabres and players like Dylan Cousins. Like, I think the main preoccupation here for the Vancouver Canucks, as much as the blue line may be an issue as well. I'm pretty sure that Vancouver wants to make sure they're insulated with centers, knowing that they're going to let go of one and possibly a pair here. That they want to make sure that they have centers coming back. Otherwise, you might look at it and say, I wonder if they can fish Owen Power out of the Buffalo Sabres for Elias Pettersson here. I know the money doesn't exactly wash, but these things can get massaged. So I think, like, if you're looking for Elias Pettersson, I think you're probably considering initially a team like the Buffalo Sabres. I do wonder about Kevin Adams and where he's at with trades, considering all the players that have left and ended up winning Stanley Cups. See O'Reilly, see Eichel, and see half of the Florida Panthers from last season. So I wonder how much, Kevin Adams might be a little bit gun shy to pull the trigger on something massive. But I think that, these are, even though they're huge, I still think that they are doable deals in season. And certainly the Vancouver Canucks are motivated to do something with one, if not both, because they're, as many with Elliott specifically have mentioned, they're very much gauging the marketplace. And I think it's like when Dreger says, like, all 31 teams have called, I think we should all bobblehead that and say, well, yeah, of course, because you're not doing your due diligence as a general manager if you're not at least checking. Even if there's no chance that any kind of deal is going to happen, there's no harm in making the call whatsoever.
One of the things we've wondered this week, Jeff, is, okay, let's say they're able to move one. Is everything going to be fine after that? Can relationships be repaired? Can the genie be put back into the bottle? What's more likely, onwards and upwards from one of them being moved, or
the leftover faction?
Is it more likely that this is just working towards a full team makeover around Quinn Hughes? Step one towards that.
That is such a great point. We've seen it before. You go back to the 100. This is a great point. It's a really good point. You go back to the 100-year anniversary of the Montreal Canadiens, and it was, Camp Koivu and Camp Kovalev, and here's Bob Gainey pulling his hair out the entire season. We can all recall how that one went from Montreal. In Toronto, there were a couple of different rival camps. There was the, Travis Green, Corson, and Tucker, and then there was the Domi camp on the other. And you're right, like, no matter what you do, there's still going to be, again, and I don't know if this is true in Vancouver, but if the room is divided and one guy goes, what happens to that camp that was loyal to the player that just got traded? Like, how deep do the wounds go? How deep is the divide in this room? Or is it more of a contained fire where it's just isolated to these two players and everybody is just trying to make sure they can get through a day and get through a game and get to the next city and get through the next period? Because you're right, that is such a good point. Sometimes, even though you remove one player, the loyalties can still remain, and that can
you might deepen it.
Point.
You might deepen the divide. Because unless you consummate a really good one-for-one trade that, like, keeps the team at the same level, the team might, to the eyes of the guys in the room, get a little bit worse here in the immediate, and then there's resentment that it's happened. And, I don't think it's Montagues versus Capulets with regards to the actual factions, but maybe it gets there if it causes a fracture in the room.
UBC English Lit, Jeff.
I was going to say University of Guelph English Lit here, so I do appreciate the Shakespeare reference. Very good. Outdam Spot. I'll throw some Lady Macbeth at you while we're at it. And speaking of, outdam Spot, like, does that then make it more incumbent to get this thing done sooner than later? Just to make sure that, to your point, the wound doesn't get so deep that it's that the damage is so done that you can't come back from it. Again, I'm not there. I'm not in the room. I'm just wondering, like everybody else. And that's some excellent points here. How deep is the divide? Is there a divide? And how do you go about repairing it here?
First of all, like you guys have to be the only two English lit majors working in sports media. And if you're listening or watching at home as a young person thinking, what's my pathway into this business? I assure you it's not English.
No, I would not.
Literature.
That means
stylish
we were not good students. And instead of being tenured professors, conference hopping and marking papers, we're here saying things like,
I slept in the library.
That's offside. Ooh, that's a bad pass. And we'll be right back.
Another possible trade that the Canucks need to consider, and this is going to drive some people nuts here, is Brock Boeser. And this is another casualty of the salary cap world here. In a non-cap world, you've got no problem paying Brock Boeser. You like what he brings. He's got some leadership, I think, attributes to him. In a non-cap world, of course you bring back Brock Boeser. Say that four times quick.
Alliteration.
But it's a piece of the puzzle in the salary cap world. He's not getting faster. He's a good player, very good player.
Sure.
But do you have room for Brock Boeser under your salary cap structure, given what you've got coming with regards to goaltending, with regards to Quinn Hughes? Yeah. I mean, it just might be a casualty, might it? And do you have to deal with that right now rather than have him head towards free agency?
A couple of things. I'm not sure how much the issue is the decimal point versus the term. Like if it's a short-term deal, is that more digestible?
But why would he do that, right? That's the problem.
But again, like to your point, you're right. Like why would Brock Boeser do that? Now, a couple of minds here, and this goes to the sort of the heart of being a general manager. There are some managers who are very much of the philosophy that we can't let this player go for nothing. We can't let them walk away. And then there are other managers. Funny, I was talking to one this offseason. We were talking about the idea of letting players walk because their salary demands didn't work with the team salary cap. And I'm more on this camp. And this manager said to me, I enjoy the challenge as a manager of having someone walk away at the expiration of their contract. We don't receive anything for it. We're not trading his rights. We didn't move him at deadline. He just walked away. But we have something, and that is cap space. Says, I enjoy the challenge. Like, this is the job of being a manager. The challenge of saying to myself, okay, now it's my job to use this cap space to go find someone to replace that player. That is my job. The easy thing is to just resign. The challenging thing, and this goes to how much confidence you have in yourself and how much you believe in yourself as a manager, the challenge of saying, Brock Boeser wants to go, okay, we're going to see as far as we can go this year, and if he walks, he walks. If he resigns, great. But if he walks away, I'm confident enough in myself that I can go to market and find someone to replace Brock Boeser. I think situations like this really hit at the heart of who you are as a manager. Because I've always maintained, if you have faith in your ability as a manager, you're very comfortable letting players walk away. If not, maybe you're rushing to re-signing and overpaying either by decimal point or by term.
And I'm not under the impression that this management group is in love with this roster.
I don't think they're in. Yes.
So they might be of the mind that Jeff's talking about.
I think they like this roster a lot better at the beginning of the season than they do right now.
Yeah.
And I do think they understand that, they don't transport the puck very well. They are really deficient when it comes to being a rush team that can play with speed and threaten in that regard. Just before we leave Elias, JT, I guess we already left them, but I want to I want to put Carolina out there for several reasons. Number one, apparently they came knocking on Elias last year. Mm-hmm. Number two, they're not really having the greatest season, Carolina. The Canucks are in there tonight. Number three, I think all things are possible with that owner, right? And then you look at their roster and whether or not it would be something a little closer to 1-for-1 involving an Aho, and I know he's got a no move, or Natchez, who they had some trouble. Remember, he was on the block all summer.
Yep.
Or whether it's a package deal with the centerman involving a Kakiniemi or someone like that. Like, there are a lot of pieces in Carolina that could be put together and fit in a deal with Vancouver. I just don't know whether that's something they're inclined to do by this trade deadline. Like they look at it and go, okay, we're third place in our division and, we've got to get better because we haven't been good enough in the past, or whether that's something that's more off-season for Carolina.
See, my
insight?
My first thought on it is Elias Pettersson does seem like the type of player that Carolina would covet and see value in. The other thing that would come to my mind right away, and this is where I was going to try to maybe nudge this one, as you looking for the marketplace for Elias Pettersson. One of the teams that I've wondered about for Elias Pettersson is Columbus. And Don Waddell was the general manager last year. He came knocking for Elias Pettersson. Like all of a sudden, the Columbus Blue Jackets now look like they've taken a step. And I know you might look at it and say, "Oh, this is fool's gold. It's a little bit of a bump. Okay, good for them. That's cute." But all of a sudden now, we're talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets as being a threat for a wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. And, Ottawa is starting to, maybe shoot themselves in the foot here a little bit when it looked like they were going to try to, run away and hide with that final wild card spot. Columbus is on a real uptick right now. Waddell has been interested previously. There is and always has been, like you go back to the beginnings of the Columbus Blue Jackets in the Doug McLean era. What's the one position they have always coveted and never been able to satisfy? Like that's the one. And I don't mean to just completely dodge away from your question about Carolina, because
no, that's totally fair.
I could see Carolina in that mix, but I would also want to throw in Columbus here. I think that Columbus is in a fascinating spot right now. They have a lot of cap space. Make no mistake about it, they have a ton of cap space. They still have needs, and now with the Monahan injury, that makes things even more challenging. And
they got an extra first-round pick too. First-round pick to throw around too.
Yep, absolutely. So, to me, in a lot of ways, Columbus makes a lot of sense. I think there are still a lot of things here that Don Waddell wants to do on this team. I do wonder about Ivan Provorov, and where once upon a time I thought for sure this guy's gone by deadline. I'm not so sure about that. I wonder, and I had Waddell on the other day on the sheet, and he was talking about not closing the door to re-signing the player. And some might look at that and say, oh, that's just a tactic to raise the potential trade value. I'm told it's not. I'm told that Provorov likes it there. I think for the right decimal point, I think the Columbus Blue Jackets would be interested in bringing him back. I don't know. What's
the Damon Severson antics? What's going on there? Do you think?
Yeah, I think if they could move him, they probably would. But I just don't know what the market value, given the realities of that contract.
Yeah.
Like that's a real tough one to move right now. It's too bad. I really like the player. I really like the person as well. It's not working out with the Blue Jackets. And that was a different regime again. And
the contract goes forever.
That one,
which is
that one does not
problem
end.
there.
Yeah, that one's a challenging one, and a hard time staying in the lineup. But I would wonder about Columbus. I very much would. Like Don, we talk about managers that have reputations for being aggressive and making moves and being bold. We always tend to put Jim Rutherford right on top, and for good reason. He's one of, if not the most aggressive in the NHL. I'd put Don Waddell right in there as well.
Who do you like the most of
two guys that aren't shy?
Let's go shopping in the CBJ. Who do you like the most of a Sillinger, Johnson, Fantilli? Who do you think's got the best upside?
Fantilli. Yeah. Fantilli's the guy. I mean, he's like just so high skill. Like he's still, again, he comes out of Michigan, and he's so skilled, and he's just in the process, like all young players, learning the game at the NHL level. Like it became pretty obvious. You watched him as a Wolverine. Okay, this guy's past it. Like, let's get this guy to the NHL as soon as he can. But now he's in the process of learning the program. All the skills.
But therein lies the problem, Jeff. Like if you're moving Elias Pettersson here, you're trying to contend for a cup, and is Fantilli, ready to be a 2C on a cup contender. Anyways, marvelous looking prospect, though. Lastly, good sir.
Yes, sir.
We spent an awful lot of time over the last couple of weeks talking about Hockey Canada player selection at the World Juniors.
Yes.
This Four Nations is coming up. And Hockey Canada player selection at the position where we all looked around and went, boy, we're really weak there.
Yeah.
They took Sam Montembeault over Logan Thompson in Washington. Logan Thompson is now 17-2-2 with a .919 save percentage.
Yeah.
And a 2.32 goals against average.
Yeah.
Gosh, it would be a real shame if our best goaltender was not on the team next month.
Yeah. I do get it. I understand. I wondered about that one initially when it happened. I'll tell you what, I was talking to someone the other day from Hockey Canada, and we were talking about, how they're getting carved for roster construction for the World Juniors. And he said, look, that's legitimate. Like, everybody has their rights to take a swipe at us for roster selection. That's fine, or even roster deployment for that matter for Dave Cameron. And he said, we really do have a feeling here that, they're hanging another piñata up here for Hockey Canada for the Four Nations face-off. And everyone's ready to grab a stick and have a whack at this piñata if it goes south for the Four Nations face-off. So I think everybody at Hockey Canada is well aware of it. I think that they're bracing for it. With hockey at Hockey Canada, and I think that as much as I think a couple of things. One, just to pick up on the junior conversation, clearly, the way that they choose teams is going to change. I really do believe there'll probably be they'll go back to the idea of the full-time general manager, probably go back to that situation.
Maybe choose the best players.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, I had no trouble with Hill or Binnington as selections, and both of them are now rocking a less than 900 save percentage.
Yeah.
But Binning, we got to wrap up here. We're out, but again, much like the juniors, it's not hindsight; it's foresight. A lot of people were saying this on the way in, not after seeing results. My friend, you have a marvelous weekend. You take good care of our Canucks when they're in Toronto tomorrow, okay?
Thanks, Joe. Yes, absolutely. We know how much everybody in Toronto loves the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Mm-hmm. If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into game weekend. Book your stay here at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Harrison Price rate. Call the hotel 604-331-1000. Ask for us by name. Some blackout date supply based on availability. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at harrisonprice.com. All to the Great Clips text message inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Is it? Is it going to be great?
Somehow, some way. Not the haircut.
Good,
the haircut will definitely be great. The world,
desperately need one.
Don't know.
Yeah. So interesting little do-si-do yesterday in the Canadian Football League at the running back position, where the BC Lions are the fulcrum. Hamilton releases ex-Lions tailback James Butler, who immediately signs here in BC. Lions release William Stanback, who immediately signs in Ottawa, rejoining ex-Lions coach Rick Campbell, who's there as the special teams coordinator. And Stanback actually very classy post on his socials, farewell statement of Lions fans. James Butler, of course, was here in 21 and 22. He rushed for 1,000 yards in 22. He also had 53 catches that year. And this move, according to General Manager Ryan Rigg, made it in the statement released, the press release, is about pass protection and catching the football out of the backfield. Nathan Rourke throws to running backs more than Vernon Adams
Right.
ever did. Vernon Adams was much more a
Downfield,
downfield passer. Yeah. And of course, you'll remember they brought William Stanback in when they wanted to get serious about, a power running game, line of scrimmage play, which had been wanting in the couple of years prior to 2020.
A lot of 8-yard passes for Vernon Adams. You had second and 2. Stanback great at getting those, right? But,
yeah. So they wanted a different profile at running back, and Butler seemed absolutely over the moon about coming back here to BC. You can tell he enjoyed his time in Vancouver. Lions also re-signed global defensive tackle Theo Debaye. He has been quite a success story, the Belgian Express. In fact, he became the first global player to score a touchdown last year, if you remember. And hey, if you're forced to carry a global player, a guy who can play your defensive line rotation, that's a pretty useful spot. Yeah, absolutely. And then this, and look, this may not have been as pronounced here in BC because there were several Lions games last year that were excruciating to watch, very, very frustrating. But more often than not, we got to Monday or Tuesday in the summer last year, and we would typically be talking about a pretty darn good CFL game over the weekend. This from CFL Stats. In 2024, precision passing led to one of the most efficient offensive years ever recorded in the league. The passer rating was 96.9, the highest since 2016 and the second best in CFL history. So it was a pretty good product last year. There were a lot of close games, a lot of games decided on the final play, the final minute, and the passing game across 9 franchises was pretty darn good. So let's hope that's the case again this coming season. And, of course, Nathan Rourke will have a full off-season training camp preseason.
I would say my Christmas wish list for the CFL.
10th team?
Well,
Commissioner?
That's just always those
schedule release.
Okay, those are orders of business that just,
and we're past Christmas, incidentally, Blake. Some of those things typically the schedule is
New
out
Year's
before.
resolutions for the CFL. But no, I want like 1 or 2 like breakout stars this year, like guys,
receivers too.
Like offensive guys that could be poster faces, if you will, for the league. I think they're just a little shy on superstars. I would love to see 1 or 2 superstars emerge from this season.
I would like to see some receivers break out. Nothing against Justin McInnes, who was sensational for the BC Lions. But only one player had 10 receiving touchdowns last year. That was Eugene Lewis in Edmonton. Only 2 players broke 1,200 yards receiving, McInnes and Justin Hardy in Ottawa. So, yeah, I would the receiver position was a little down last year in the CFL, or the ball was just being spread to more guys. But yeah, I hear you. I would love to see some receivers step up.
Like we grew up with like Darryl Smith getting 20.
Darryl
Pitts.
Pitts. I mean,
even Stiegel. I mean,
G-Roy, Mill. I mean, go down the list. Ben Cahoon. Like there was a time when virtually, I mean, go back even further. Guys like Winfield and Champion and Hamilton, Terry Greer and Mervyn here, right? Like there was a time where every CFL team had a star, like star to superstar,
and almost a touchdown a game kind of guy.
Sorta, yeah.
Like long way from that.
And yes, the schedule is not out
still,
and there's no commissioner.
Well, how could you release the schedule if there's
you should be able to release the schedule without a commissioner. I don't believe you need a commissioner to release.
They have
the
other
schedule.
staff.
There is other staff. Moving on to MLS and the Whitecaps head coaching search. Tom Bogert, MLS insider, is connecting Gio Savarese, former Portland Timbers manager, saying he's one of the finalists for the Whitecaps gig. Alas, Jim Curtin is no longer involved, if he was involved. ESPN's Jeff Carlisle reporting the former Philadelphia manager He doesn't want to coach at the moment, doesn't want to uproot the family. He's going to have another look at that in season or somewhere down the road in 2025. There had been interest from the Caps, from TFC, who actually hired a manager today, and from Atlanta.
It might just be a polite way of saying, I don't want to coach
any of those teams. Yeah. And then we mentioned yesterday Dave Wagner, a former skipper with both English Premier League sides and German Bundesliga sides, has history with the two German clubs that Axel Schuster has been connected with in his career. Craig Forrest mentioned him as a candidate for the Caps. He turned down Plymouth in England.
That's curious.
That is, I mean, if he's turning down an English club of that order
that's what I'm saying.
Take the Caps job, wow.
That looks good on the Caps.
That would look very good on the Caps.
I'm told that it's not going to happen today. It'd be way out of left field if they announced anything today. We're going to have to wait till early next week. Yeah.
NFL playoffs this weekend, wild card weekend. This from ESPN. Scoring margin versus playoff teams this season. The Baltimore Ravens just didn't beat playoff teams. They annihilated playoff teams this year. They were plus 112 against the playoff field in point differential. The next best on that list is Detroit at plus 36.
Whoa.
Like, they literally tripled the next best team in scoring margin.
That must historically be great. Like,
it's a bit of an odd stat. I don't have historical context here. But Baltimore, Detroit, Philly, Tampa, Kansas City, Denver. Those are the teams that were on the plus side of the ledger against good teams, playoff teams this year. Minnesota, Buffalo, Green Bay, the Rams, Pittsburgh, Washington, the Chargers, and Houston were all negative point differential teams.
That tracks for the Ravens, though, Matt, because it tracks for a team like the Ravens in that they need to win. They need to win the trophy.
For sure.
Like, enough of being a great team.
Right.
They need to prove they can win the damn trophy. And if their whole thing this year was we rise to the occasion against the good teams, they prove that to themselves at the very least.
And I'm sure they were very motivated by that AFC Championship game loss to Kansas City, where they just couldn't do it. Had them at home and just couldn't do anything. I was talking with our friend Stu in statistics the other day. This is going to be a really interesting AFC playoffs because I think a lot of it pivots on the Baltimore Ravens running game. Their offensive coordinator there, Todd Monken, has done an exceptional job this year of different looks in the running game, which has been successful. And then the question is, if you can't even out-scheme other teams with multiple looks, does it matter with the way that Derrick Henry is running the football? You know, Lamar's got to lay it all on the line here, right? He's got to be a big runner in the playoffs. It's go time here. You're not saving yourself for anything. So look, I think they're going to beat Pittsburgh. That game is tomorrow. And then somebody has to win that Chargers-Houston game. They were the two worst teams in terms of points differential against the playoff field. That kicks things off. Do you know that the Houston Texans have only ever played the Saturday early game on Wild Card Weekend? That is the smallest marquee of all the windows on Wild Card Weekend, and the Texans have played in it.
And they haven't been good enough. They haven't been good enough to earn another spot.
That's right. The Texans have played in that early Saturday window every single time that they've been in Wild Card, that they've been participating in Wild Card Weekend. So there you go. Maybe that informs some of your picks as your Bet365 picks as you go through Wild Card Weekend. Okay, Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Thursday. We asked you, is this Canucks team worth adding to with deadline additions? Yes or no? What did the people say?
People always hope for the better. So yes, the people said yes.
This was a week of surprising poll question results, partner. They said no. 55% said no.
That's really surprising.
There has been a few this week that have.
Yeah.
Tom, people saying no are delusional. Almost any other team would be out of a playoff spot if they dealt with all the shit the Canucks have. Look at the Rangers. Add a top 4 defenseman, a good supporting player, and this team is actually competitive. Would people rather us be a bubble team?
That same
That's a fair point.
contributor is then, I hope, voting overachieving
Yes, I
on
would
today's
think
poll
so.
question. That's the
Some
whole
of
logic of the
few
over.
and proud with
Yeah.
you and Peach.
Yeah.
Yebskis, if not now, then when? LMAO. The Canucks haven't won shit in their existence, yet fans think they should wait it out? No wonder this franchise is cupless. Fish Dancer voted no rentals. If you can find a permanent upgrade at any point, pull the trigger. Okay. Dantastic. Adding makes 0 sense when they have to overhaul the decor again. And then the Shadows says,
Ooh.
yeah, any team with Quinn Hughes is worth adding to. I hear that too.
Yeah, I hear that too.
Errors and omissions from Thursday's program and beyond. I have 3. Hated the phrasing of our poll yesterday. The redundancy of adding and additions. Should have just said, is the Canucks team worth adding to at the deadline? Blake called Quinn's bandage a cast. Dr. Gruel explained it's bandage.
An apparatus like a cast.
Okay. And then on Tuesday, and he's usually spot on all this, our buddy John Shannon, when discussing the future of sports media and distribution, said to us he thought that the one-stop shopping app for all your sports, Venue, that was being developed by Disney, ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers would be in place for the Super Bowl. Today, those 3 companies announcing that they have discontinued development of that app. And sadly, the one-stop shopping app for all your sports watching needs sounds like it's a little further away.
Or they're just going to call it something else. They're going to funnel it somewhere
Or maybe
else.
just 2 of the partners are going forward there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But John thought that might get kicked into gear here. And alas, not so much. And maybe it is connected to ESPN buying Fubo. We did, which we also talked about with John.
Also, from yesterday, Yerke takes umbrage with my francophonizing of Yellow Dog.
Chien-Jean.
I said Jean Chien to help the Anglos along a little bit, go directly with the grammatically for yes.
Chien-Jean. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms. Back to noon Pacific time from Monday and there forward. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.